Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling risk appetite.
Okay.
And for this deep dive, we're using an episode of the new compliance officer's playbook.
Right.
And, it's interesting that they use this analogy of a fintech startup,
Yeah.
which is, like a company that's trying to grow super fast, but also has to, follow all the rules.
Right.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Yeah, it is. It is
Okay.
delicate balance.
So they jump right into this idea of risk appetite.
Yeah.
But, I think for our listeners, like, what does that actually mean? Like in plain English?
So risk appetite, it's basically a company's conscious decision about how much risk they're willing to take on
Okay.
to achieve their goals.
Okay.
And it's not just about avoiding risk altogether.
Right.
It's more about how much risk they're willing to accept
Yeah.
to get to where they want to be.
Okay. So it's not like, like fear of risk.
Right.
It's more about it's more about strategizing.
Using it as a tool
Exactly.
to get to something else.
Yeah. If you think about it,
Yeah.
every decision we make involves some kind of risk, right?
Yeah.
Even, small decisions like investing in a new product
Yeah.
or going into a new market.
Right.
There's always that uncertainty.
Right.
So risk appetite is all about defining what's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What level of uncertainty are we okay with as a company
Okay.
to reach our goals?
Okay. Now, they mentioned in the podcast how a bank has to be super careful
Yeah.
because of all the regulations.
Yeah.
And, a tech company might be able to move a little faster.
Right.
So is that what they mean?
Yeah, that's a perfect example
Okay.
of how risk appetite looks different in
Okay.
different industries, right?
Okay.
So you also have this thing called risk tolerance,
Okay.
which is, a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's more specific. It's measurable.
Okay.
Like, for example, risk tolerance would be
Yeah.
how much money can we afford to lose
Okay.
on a particular venture, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But risk appetite is kind of that bigger picture.
Okay.
It's that overarching philosophy
Got it.
that guides those specific decisions.
Okay. So how does a company actually figure out what its risk appetite is? The podcast mentioned talking to leadership, but where do you even start with that?
Yeah, it's a tough question.
Yeah.
There's no easy formula.
Right.
But there are a few areas the podcast talked about that are really good starting points.
Okay, let's break those down. Where do we begin?
So the first one, and it might seem kind of obvious,
Yeah.
is business objectives.
Okay.
What's the company actually trying to do?
Right.
Are they trying to grow really fast?
Mm-hmm.
Are they focused on innovation?
Okay.
Are they trying to get into new markets?
Right.
All of those
Yeah.
imply different levels of risk
Okay.
that the company might be willing to take on.
Okay, so a company that's all about growth and getting there fast
Yeah.
is probably going to take on more risk than a company that's been around for 100 years.
Right. They might be more comfortable with those bolder moves.
Yeah.
Even if there's, a higher chance of failure.
Right. Right. Okay, so that's one area.
Yeah. And then, like we talked about before,
Yeah.
that difference between risk tolerance and risk appetite.
Yeah.
Right. So a company might have,
Okay.
a really high risk appetite.
Yeah.
So they're okay with bold moves in general, but they still might have a low tolerance for certain types of financial risks,
Okay.
like, taking on a massive amount of debt.
Okay.
So even risk takers
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the second thing. What's number 3?
So the third one is the industry
Okay.
and the regulatory context.
Right.
Right. So think about a fintech startup
Yeah.
versus a healthcare company.
Right.
I mean, the stakes are way higher in healthcare.
Yeah.
Right. You're dealing with people's health.
Right.
So naturally, their compliance programs and regulations, they're going to be way stricter.
Right. It's like two different games
Exactly.
with two different sets of rules.
Yeah. So that really shapes
Okay.
how much risk a company is willing to take on.
Okay. So what's the final piece of this puzzle?
The final piece is all about the internal culture
Okay.
and, what we call risk culture.
Okay.
Right. So what does that mean?
So think about it. Is this company
Yeah.
full of people who are trailblazers, always pushing the boundaries?
Yeah.
Or do they play it safe?
Right.
Stability.
Predictability.
Right.
That underlying culture
Yeah.
it massively influences how they perceive risk.
So you could have two companies, same industry,
Yeah.
similar goals.
Exactly.
But totally different risk appetites.
Totally different based on their culture.
Based on their culture. Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, you have a company with like, move fast and break things mentality.
Right.
They might be more likely to, take risks on new products, technologies.
Yeah.
Even if they haven't been tested thoroughly.
Yeah, right.
Whereas a more conservative company might prioritize, thoroughness, analysis, even if it means being a little slower to market.
Right.
So yeah, culture plays a huge role.
Okay. So knowing a company's risk appetite feels like it's important for, not just the CEO, but like everybody.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
You understand like where your company sits on that risk spectrum.
Right.
It helps you make better decisions, I think.
Right.
It helps you like anticipate any problems that might come up.
Right.
And you can even like contribute to a better, stronger overall strategy.
Right. So like, let's say a company has figured all this out. They know what their risk appetite is. What's next? How do they actually use this?
So that's where things get real, right? That's where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
And the podcast actually gave us like a really good roadmap.
Okay, lay it on me.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay. So the first thing is they got to tailor their compliance program.
Okay.
So, a high-risk appetite might mean a more flexible program, right? Something that can adapt quickly to new challenges.
Okay.
Think about that fintech startup again.
Right.
They need to be able to move fast.
Yeah.
Adapt to new conditions in the market.
Right.
So they don't want to be slowed down by a bunch of red tape.
Right. They need to be more nimble. But then a bank, on the other hand, needs like a much more, strict, robust program. Yeah.
The stakes are much higher, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with people's money.
Right. Super sensitive information.
And sensitive data. Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the next step?
So the next step is prioritizing risk mitigation.
Okay.
Even companies with a high-risk appetite can't just ignore potential problems.
Right.
They need to be able to identify, assess the biggest risks that they're facing, and then have a plan in place to deal with them.
Okay. So it's like be prepared, not paranoid.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all about having that balance.
Yeah.
You want to take calculated risks, but you don't want to be reckless.
Right. So how do you keep up with all of that?
Right.
The world's constantly changing. What happens when something unexpected happens?
So that's where the continuous dialogue comes in.
Okay.
So risk appetite isn't a one-time decision.
Right.
It's an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
So leaders need to constantly be evaluating, the environment, asking those questions.
Okay. Like what?
Like, are business objectives still the same?
Okay.
Have regulations changed?
Yeah.
Has our risk tolerance shifted?
Okay. That sounds like a lot of work.
It can be.
Yeah.
But it's really important to stay ahead of the curve.
Okay.
So think about, the fintech company again.
Right.
Expanding internationally, right? They might start off super aggressive, high-risk appetite, want to gain market share really quickly, but then as they grow, they're subject to new regulations in different countries, and they might need to, dial back that risk a little bit, strengthen those compliance measures.
So it's adaptable. It has to kind of grow with the company.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And to make sure that everyone's on the same page, risk reporting is really crucial.
Okay.
So this keeps the leadership informed about, the status of those key risks. Helps everyone make, better decisions that are more aligned.
So transparency is key. Everybody needs to kind of understand where things stand.
Absolutely.
Okay.
When that risk information is shared and discussed openly, it creates a culture of, awareness and accountability.
Right. Okay. You mentioned earlier how understanding risk appetite is important, not just for the leaders, but for like everybody in the organization.
Yeah.
Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So imagine you're, on the marketing team.
Yeah. Okay.
And you have this like brilliant idea for a campaign.
Okay.
Right. And it's edgy. It's going to grab people's attention.
Yeah.
But also like pushes the boundaries a little bit.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Right. So if you understand your company's risk appetite, you can assess whether this campaign aligns with that.
Okay.
Right. They have a high-risk appetite, a culture of innovation, they might be all for it, right?
Yeah.
Even if it, might cause a little bit of controversy.
Right. But if they're more risk-averse...
Exactly.
then you might have to,
Yeah, you might have to tone it down a little.
Yeah.
Or, be prepared to make a really strong case for why the potential benefits outweigh those risks.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of like, having this insider knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
That helps you, navigate those decisions.
It's a secret weapon.
Right.
Right. And that applies to, any role.
Yeah.
Marketing, product development, finance, operations.
Okay.
Understanding that risk appetite helps you make those better decisions.
Right.
Anticipate problems. And ultimately contribute to a stronger strategy.
Right. So, we were talking about how risk appetite plays out in different industries, right?
Yeah.
And, you talked about the contrast between like a tech startup and a healthcare company. Are there other examples of that?
Oh, tons of examples.
Yeah.
Think about the energy sector.
Okay.
Companies that are involved in oil and gas exploration, for example, I mean, they're operating in some of the most challenging environments.
You're right.
Right. Physically, politically,
right.
Huge investments, volatile prices, complex regulations.
Right.
So their risk appetite is probably going to be pretty high.
Yeah.
But they also have to be incredibly careful.
Right.
Meticulous in how they manage those risks.
So it's not just about being willing to take risks. It's about having the systems in place to deal with those.
You got to have the expertise, the systems to manage those risks effectively.
Okay. What about the other end of the spectrum?
Right. So think about like a company that produces like consumer goods.
Okay.
Food, beverages.
Right.
They're operating in a much more stable environment.
Right.
Less inherent risk, So their risk appetite might be lower, focus more on like maintaining quality, protecting their brand reputation.
Right, consistency.
Exactly.
Right. So understanding the industry is key.
Yeah, it's crucial.
Okay.
For making sense of that risk appetite.
Okay. Now, it's not just the external environment though, right? Yeah. It's also like where the company is in its own life cycle.
Exactly.
Right.
A company's risk appetite can also be influenced by its stage of development.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Think about like a young startup versus like a mature company that's been around for a while.
Totally different.
Completely different, right?
Yeah.
A startup might be willing to, bet the farm on a new idea, whereas a more established company might be, a little more cautious, protecting what they've built.
Right. They're trying to protect their legacy as what they built. Okay.
And as companies grow and evolve, their risk appetite often shifts as well.
Right.
Right. Something that was considered like an acceptable risk in the early days might become too risky as the company, matures, go public, expands into new markets.
Right. So it's almost like risk appetite has its own life cycle.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Okay.
And that's why it's so important for companies to have a process for, like regularly reviewing, updating their risk appetite.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not just, it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah, like we make this decision and then never think about it again.
No. It has to be a living, breathing part of the company's culture.
Right.
It's got to be part of how they make decisions.
Okay, so this has been really interesting.
Yeah.
We've covered so much.
We've gone deep.
We've gone, from, defining what risk appetite is to how it plays out in different industries, at different stages of a company's life. But I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
There's always more to learn.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating field.
Okay. Before we move on to the last part of this deep dive, is there anything else that you want to add about, the importance of understanding this?
I think the biggest takeaway is don't be afraid of risk.
Oh?
It's a natural part of life.
Yeah.
It's a natural part of business. The key is to understand your own risk appetite.
The risk appetite of your organization, and then figure out how to navigate it to achieve your goals.
Right.
Whether you're, leading a team, launching a new venture, even just making a personal decision.
Right.
Having that awareness can really give you an advantage.
That's a great way to sum it up. It's like risk is everywhere.
It is.
But with the right knowledge, the right mindset, we can make it work for us.
Exactly.
Okay, stay tuned for part 3.
Yes.
Where we're going to explore like the specific tools that companies use to actually implement and manage all this. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into risk appetite.
All right.
And now it's, time to get practical.
Yes.
We've talked about what it is, why it matters.
Right.
Now, how do companies actually make this work?
So it all starts with really clearly defining and documenting the organization's risk appetite. And this isn't about just like a vague statement that ends up sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Right.
It's about creating a tangible framework, like a roadmap that outlines the types and levels of risk they're willing to accept to reach their goal.
So it's not enough to just say, we're a risk-taking company.
Exactly.
You got
to get specific.
Yeah, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, and this roadmap needs to include concrete metrics, thresholds, so that the risk appetite is actually measurable.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so for example, it might specify the maximum financial loss that the organization is willing to tolerate on an investment.
Okay.
Or, the acceptable level of data security breaches they're prepared to handle in a year.
So, if a decision comes up, you can look at those metrics.
Exactly.
And be like, okay, is this in or out?
Yeah, you're not guessing. You're not relying on gut feeling anymore.
You're looking at the data.
Data-driven decisions.
Okay, I like it.
But defining it is just the first step.
Okay.
The next piece is communicating it effectively throughout the entire organization.
So everybody needs to be on the same page.
Everyone.
Yeah.
From the CEO to the newest intern.
Right. So, what does that look like?
So let's say, for example, a company's launching a new product.
Okay.
Right. Instead of just sending out an email with the risk appetite guidelines, they could create a scenario-based workshop where teams can actually work through hypothetical challenges related to that product launch.
So it's not just, telling them about it. It's like...
Yeah, it's immersive.
Yeah.
It's more engaging.
They get to, experience it.
Exactly, yeah. And it encourages them to think critically about how those principles apply to their work.
Okay, so we've defined the risk appetite, communicated it, got everyone on board. What's next?
So the next step is to give people the tools they need to actually use this in their decisions.
Okay.
So that's where risk assessment tools come in.
Okay.
There's tons of methodologies, even software, that can help companies systematically identify, analyze, evaluate the potential risks of different decisions.
So it's not just going with your gut anymore. Just we're bringing in the data.
Yeah, you're bringing in data and analysis to make those tough calls.
Okay. And what do those tools actually do?
So they allow you to quantify things like the potential impact, the likelihood of different risks.
Okay.
And then you can compare those to those thresholds that we talked about earlier.
Right.
So it takes away a lot of the guesswork.
Okay, so this makes risk management sound a lot more proactive than reactive.
That's the goal.
Okay.
It's about anticipating those potential problems and taking steps to prevent them.
Right.
Or at least minimize the impact.
Okay, so let's say we've done the assessment and a project comes up that's way outside the appetite. What happens?
So that's when you start talking about risk mitigation strategies.
Okay.
So if the risk is just deemed unacceptable, the company needs a plan to either reduce the likelihood of that risk happening or minimize the impact if it does happen.
Okay, so give me some examples. What does that look like?
Okay, so let's say a company's worried about a data breach, right?
Yeah.
They could implement stronger security protocols.
Okay.
Invest in employee training.
Okay.
Get cyber insurance.
Okay.
To minimize that financial fallout.
So it's like a multi-layered approach?
Exactly. You're not just relying on one thing.
Right.
Or let's say a company's thinking about expanding into a new market that's politically unstable.
Okay, yeah.
Right. They might partner with a local company.
Okay.
That understands the risks better.
Right. So it's like sharing that risk.
Exactly. Bringing in the experts.
Okay.
And sometimes the best way to mitigate risk is to just say no.
Right.
If the risks are too high and there's no way to really manage them, it might be better to walk away.
So it's not about just like chasing every opportunity.
Right.
It's about knowing when to
knowing when to fold them.
Yeah. Protect yourself.
Exactly. It's about making those strategic choices that align with your goals and your risk tolerance.
Right. Okay. But even when you've done all this, like, things change.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Things change all the time.
The world is unpredictable.
The world is unpredictable.
So how do you, like, keep up with that?
So that's why risk appetite can't be static.
Okay.
Right? It needs to be constantly monitored and reviewed.
Okay.
Make sure it's still relevant.
Yeah.
And that's where, reporting comes in.
Okay.
Companies need to track those key risk indicators.
Mm-hmm.
Report on them to leadership.
Yeah.
So they can make adjustments.
Yeah. So it's like, we're not just,
It's a living document.
Yeah. It's a living, breathing thing.
It's got to evolve.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been really, really fascinating.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners about, risk appetite?
Don't be afraid of risk.
Okay.
Embrace it. It's a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a part of business.
Yeah.
The key is understanding it.
Right.
Understanding your own appetite, the appetite of your organization.
Yeah.
And then, figure out how to use it to your advantage to reach your goals.
So it's about, turning risk from something that we fear into something that we understand and can use.
Yeah, make it work for you.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot today.
We have.
I hope this deep dive has, given you a better understanding of risk appetite.
Yeah.
Why it's important, how you can actually apply it.
I see.
Remember, risk is everywhere.
It is.
But with the right knowledge, the right tools, we can navigate it and make better decisions. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back soon with another topic to explore. Until then, stay curious.